If you've ever experienced cravings, those really unhealthy ones, then you know how tricky it can be to resist, even though you know that succumbing to them is not good for you, right? So you can do a lot with willpower, but there is a softer and ultimately more sustainable way to fend off a craving and even shift its source completely. Now, today I'm going to share exactly how you can do that, so next time you get those cravings, you can make a healthier choice. Sound good? Well, let's do this. Hit it, Kim.
Welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast. You're in the right place if you're a growth-seeking being who acknowledges the challenges and delights of your humanity on the path to an ever more conscious life. If you want to feel inspired to love and accept yourself, to feel free to be and express you in all your brilliance, if you want to truly value yourself and others and feel energized and alive both at home and in the world, then sit back and take a breath as you explore and grow the brilliance of your beautiful human self with your host, the father of non-personal awareness and creator of the MPA process, Joel Young.
Hello, and welcome to episode 56 of the Be a Brilliant Human podcast with me, Joel Young. I am delighted you're here. If you're brand new, it's so good to see you. I wonder what brought you here. How did you find us? Let me know. There's lots of ways to let me know. You can come find me on social media at Joel Young MPA for the most part. On YouTube, it's youtube.com/Joel Young. And, or MPA Rocks is the Facebook page you can come and find me at. Or go to the beabrillianthuman.com website and there's a button there. You can just leave me a message, say hi, let me know what you think of the show, all that wonderful stuff. If you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, even if you're brand new, I know you've just arrived, go ahead and do that now. Hit that subscribe button so you can be notified when each of these episodes come out. And if you're back for more, you know you've heard me say this before, I love you so much that you choose to be here with me once a week, half an hour in your ears in some form or another. Brilliant. And also today we're going to be talking about cravings and a non-personal approach. Not directly, the way I'm going to share today isn't directly using MPA, but I'm talking about non-personal. If you haven't already downloaded the free MPA worksheet, I've actually just redone it. So you can go to MPA4, that's the number 4.me/MPA sheet and find it. Also, you'll always find a download link for that on the beabrillianthuman.com website. You can find any of the episodes that I've done. So we've done 56. We've got a great back catalogue for it. Just go to www.beabrillianthuman.com/56 or whatever number of episode you fancy having a look at. Now, if you listened last week, you know that I mentioned that I'd had a message from someone, a wonderful message, some lovely feedback about the podcast. And she also asked me or described how her situation was, that she was kind of wondering about issues that she had with eating, sort of body dysmorphia, those kind of things. And she'd heard me talk about eating in general or shifting my relationship to food. And I got back to her and said that I would do an episode on it. But actually, this is the first of 2 episodes I'm going to do that sort of cover that topic. Because today I did want to share with you this one, which is about craving specifically, and next week we'll look more in general at sort of the whole area of kind of weight issues and all that stuff. We're going to look at that next week. So this week, cravings. Those little gremlins. Well, a while ago, I was working with a client and we got into some interesting territory around cravings. She was experiencing them, and inevitably it's my one-to-one practice, which, by the way, if you want to come along and have some one-to-one work, I do have some space right now. You can go to joelyoungmpa.com/sessions. You can book a free chat with me and see if it's right for you. But inevitably in that session with her, we looked at her cravings through the lens of non-personal awareness, which is where I kind of came up with this 5-step process I'm going to share with you today. See, one of the hallmarks of the non non-personal perspective is you're switching from a personalized view to a relational one, and we'll get more into that. And it was very powerful for her to take the steps that I'm about to share with you when the cravings came calling. But before we get into those 5 steps, I do want to say that, it really bears saying that some cravings are actually just natural hunger. That's kind of the positive intent of cravings. They're just telling you that you're deficient in some nutrient. So not all of them are unhealthy. But I think we kind of know the difference. Some things we crave for, we know are not the best thing for us, or at least we know that there's sort of an element, craving addiction that's in there. So this approach that I'm going to share, these 5 steps, are for those cravings that you know are unhealthy. Good to go? Right, let me share them with you then. So what is step 1? Well, step 1 is to align with the personalized truth of the moment. If you've listened to this show for any length of time, you know that I'm a massive advocate of starting where you are. So what's happening when a craving hits you? Well, it's been embodied. In other words, you've personalized the energy, the craving energy. You've kind of entangled it with yourself in some way. It's like you've claimed the craving is yours. It's my craving. And you've literally made it part of yourself. So you've taken the energy of craving and you've kind of smashed it together with you. And you are the craving. And hence all of those strong feelings and urges and emotions. So starting where you are may be a bit surprising, but, really aligning with the truth of the moment is to acknowledge that that's happened, because it grounds you in the current reality and means that any movement you make from there is more connected and therefore more impactful. And I've gone into that in more depth in some other episodes. I have to do a bit of research because I haven't done it as I'm recording this. So if I find some that specifically talk more about that, I'll put them as related episodes in the notes. So again, you'll go to the notes, www.beabrillianthuman.com/56. But how can you do this in a simple way? So the simple way to align with the personalized truth of the moment is simply to state the truth of it. I have a craving. Just stating it. Now, there's a power in stating it, especially out loud. The MPA process, and you can get the sheet for that, as I said, download that for free. But the MPA process is a spoken word process. I'm a great believer in the power of the word. So literally just making a statement, I have a craving, it just owns the moment. And in fact, a secondary benefit of that is it kind of does a pattern interrupt. Normally you sneakily, somewhere underneath the surface, you have a craving, you try and deny it, and then it acts out. And you reach for the thing that's not good for you. But by just saying, I have a craving, literally just goes, whoa, here it is. I'm admitting the truth of what's here now. And so there's a great power to it. And again, as I said, the most important thing about step 1 is to start where you are. It aligns you with what's true in the moment. Once you've done that, you're ready for step 2. Now, step 2 is to step into the non-personal, or what I would say is the relational perspective. So remember how I've just talked about how, you've kind of taken the energy of craving and the energy of you and you kind of smashed them together and made them one. But the truth is, you're not, in fact, the craving. I have a craving admits the truth that you're saying I am the craving in a way. That's the personalized perspective, but that's not the case. You're not the craving. Now that might seem like an obvious statement, but it's so automatic to personalize these, I guess, independent or separate energies. We often miss the blindingly obvious. So there's a simple statement that you can make, again, to really move from that personalized perspective to the non-personalized perspective. So we go from I have a craving, which is step 1, to the non-personalized view. There is a craving. I want you to feel the difference. Do it now. I have a craving. There is a craving. Feel that? It's like somehow already that disentanglement has happened with the simple power of 2 statements. We've kind of outed we've outed the independence of the craving energy from our own energy. I mean, this is a really powerful step to make. And it's good if you're doing this, not to just give it lip service. I mean, it is just to really stop and feel it. Stop and feel the difference. It's like from I have a craving, there is a craving. there's just a craving. The energy of craving is here, right? There is a craving. That's step 2. So once you've done that disentanglement, step 3 is to understand that an unhealthy craving is driven by pain. So this is actually true of any imbalanced behavior. And if it's an unhealthy craving, it's an imbalanced behavior. Underlying it is kind of some form of pain. And that pain is driving some misdirected behavioral response, that's what makes it unhealthy, right? So, it's like whatever that pain is, normally the way that we cover up a pain or we try and deal with the pain with our survival strategies is we set up, a really, some kind of path that sort of makes us to survive, which isn't always ultimately healthy, but does the job at the time. That's what we've done. So this step 3 is about understanding that the unhealthy craving is driven by pain. So to see this more clearly, again, I'm going to use just a simple statement that aligns you with that perspective. And that's just to say out loud, the craving is in pain. So again, I want you to feel that. So we've gone from I have a craving to there is a craving, then the craving is in pain. Can you feel how you're kind of that sort of disentanglement factor, which is so important for this process, is really helping you to sort of step away and get a distance from the craving itself? Because again, in the non-personal perspective, it's about shifting the relationship to the issue that's going on, right? So that makes you ready for step 4. So a step 4, once you've acknowledged and really allowed yourself to open to the fact that there's this craving, it's not in here, it's out there, and it's in pain, is to align yourself with compassion for the craving. Now, I know chances are you've had an unhealthy craving and it beats you every time. You might be a bit miffed with that craving. But once you realize it's not you, it's not entangled, and it comes, it's coming from a space of pain, then normally compassion is like a natural response. And by the way, this is not about figuring out what that pain is or analyzing it or fixing it. It's literally just stepping into the perspective of compassion. So simply allowing yourself to acknowledge that the craving is a distinct energy, it's pain, it's pain generally elicits that kind of response of compassion. But the thing about that is compassion, or compassionate perspective, is an empowering perspective for you personally. Because again, think about it. When you've been succumbing to cravings, maybe trying really hard, using that willpower, and then it works for a while, then fails, works for a while, then fails, you can feel like you are in a disempowered state. It's like the craving has control over you. It literally is like this craving is coming in, is the puppeteer. I didn't want to eat that bun. The craving made me do it. But it's actually kind of true. But really stepping into this place where you really step into a place of compassion, realizing it's separate and having compassion for it, puts you in the seat of power. Now, there's no statement as such for this step. As I say, compassion often is very natural. If you really get that it's coming from pain, then compassion will probably naturally come from you, but not always. We're not all saints. And even saints among us, let's be honest. Compassion takes work sometimes. But here's a great way to do it. Just imagine that craving as a little puppy in pain. You can almost visualize it. There you are. It's like a little puppy. It's in pain. That's your craving. Or that's the craving. That's the craving that's separate from you. Maybe that'll help you get some compassion for it. Usually does the trick. So just as an aside, this step really, it's and the whole sort of seeing it as something else that is in pain, and definitely seeing it as a puppy. It's a form of personification, which is another sort of very powerful non-personal technique that I use a lot. It kind of further solidifies the realization that you and the energy are separate entities. And, if you're one of these vibrational speaking people into Abraham, then as you probably know, compassion puts you in a much higher vibration than succumbing to the craving in a disempowered way. So once you've taken these 4 steps in a place of compassion, step 5 is very important. Step 5 is to open the possibilities of another action or behavioral response. So an unhealthy craving is fixated on a particular behavior or action as the antidote to its pain. So be that eating or smoking, whatever it is, that's the thing that you have in the cravings and you don't want to do it because you recognize it's unhealthy. So, when you give into it or you are taken over by it, when you personally identify with it, you're actually subject to all the beliefs and behaviors that come with it. So now that you're untangled from it, you're in a space of compassion, you're in a much stronger place to open the doors to possibility. So why is this important? Well, again, the craving usually has a singular focus: sugar, carbs, nicotine, whatever that thing is. It's like it's got it. This is how I solve this discomfort, this pain. So it's got an idea of that's the only way. So once you're in empowered place, it's about introducing this sort of energy of possibility. Again, this is not about figuring out what it is. Again, in the non-personal perspectives, we allow the mechanisms to have their own space to find you. So again, if you've listened to this podcast for a while, I talk a lot about inquiry, and the nature of inquiry is you ask the question, let the answers find you, rather than seeking, which is a very cerebral or mental process. And there's a place in the world for analysis. But these kind of times are not it, because it's about just allowing, whatever the other possibilities are, just let them come in. So this step really is about just introducing that sort of the sense of possibility or options into the mix. And the point is to align you and what I would call the relational space between you and the craving with that sort of option energy. So there is a simple statement that you can use, which is, again, non-specific, because we're not analyzing or figuring it out. It's just that this little statement just introduces that possibility, and it's this: there is another way. So if you can sort of follow it along, you can feel that there's, often the ways that I work, if you've downloaded the unconditional pivot exercise, and lots of the approaches that I use, they start where you are and they take little incremental steps into a place where you're much more empowered, and you're able to, you have to take some massive leap that stretches you too far and you snap back. Each little step has its piece of the puzzle, and that's something that I seem to be able to do really well. So we're going to go through it. So first of all, acknowledge, starting where you are, I have a craving. That acknowledges that personalized, you've mashed it together. Then you go, there is a craving. Again, that begins the process of putting it outside of yourself. It's not so personal anymore. The craving is in pain, acknowledges it, and begins the personification process, and hopefully elicits compassion, which is step 4. And if you need a little help, then you can just visualize it as a puppy in pain. Once you've got compassion, you're then standing separate to it and in a place of empowerment. And then the last bit is just, there is another way. And one thing I've found when I've tried this out and done it on myself, and also I did this with the client that originally, when I was working with, when this originally popped out of me, as these things do, is you can say there is another way with compassion, right? It's like, there is another way. And again, what I found with this, and this has been with the people that I know that have tried it and have reported back to me, there is another way. Often what happens is that you'll get some kind of inspiration. This is why seeking out or figuring out the answer isn't the best way. It's like, literally, once you get to the end of step 5, there is another way. Just wait, be still. And it may be go exercise, or it may be just go back to doing whatever you were doing before. Or it may be that if it's food, that you get some strange inspiration to eat something that's healthier. Again, when you're really wide open and have no agenda about it, that's when the magic really happens. I know in some situations for myself, this is where certain cravings I found kind of almost like a new a new habit that comes naturally, that feels better, is healthier, but somehow serves the positive intention of the craving. Because if the craving's in pain, it's picked that particular unhealthy behavior in order to do you good in some way. This is why it's easier to have compassion. So often, if you really do let go, and when you say there is another way, just be wide open, you can be surprised what comes as a natural response. I also will say that it may be that nothing comes, and that's okay. It isn't really about the mechanism that will come in the end. It's literally the power of introducing that there is another possibility than whatever has been fixated on is tremendously powerful in itself. And for a lot of people, it's just a matter of just that they find that the craving loses its power in the moment. So again, not to be attached to that outcome. Now, as I said, my client found this incredibly helpful. That's why I wanted to share it with you today, and I hope that it makes a difference in your life experience. And I'd love to hear what you experienced with it if you go ahead and use it. And you can again let me know by those usual means. So I want to talk a bit more about shifting relationships, because this is at the core of what MPA does. The MPA process is the way, the non-personal approaches, all the things that I do. At their core, they're about shifting your relationship to the issue, as I said already. And in this arena, it's quite interesting. I remember in the early days of MPA, when I first started teaching it, and I was doing live events, and part of what I was teaching there was about, a story I'll get into next week about how I shifted my relationship to food and exercise. And that inspired a lot of people to use MPA, or specifically the MPA programs, which I share and talk about and teach in the advanced training. And I would have follow-up calls at the time to sort of check in on people on how things were going. And this is an example, is about cravings, it's about food, but it's also about how we we miss the shifts. We just do it. So this particular lady had said she wanted to shift her relationship with food. That's what she wanted to do. And, often on those calls, I'd have people that had attended the event, and I'd be saying, how are your programs going? What are you working with? How's it working? And you get all these, I've got loads of amazing testimonials and incredible things happening. This one lady, I remember she was kind of quite a gruff sort of air about her. And she said, well, nothing's happened, it doesn't work for me. I was like, well, okay, you have to acknowledge any kind of method doesn't necessarily work for anybody. But I said, well, what were you trying to work on? And, what's happened? Just talk me through it. And she was like, well, nothing happened. She said, I want to shift my relationship with food, but I still get the cravings. She said, I'm not eating, but I'm still eating on them, but I'm still getting the cravings. And I was like, hang on. So what you're telling me is before the MPA, you had the cravings, you succumbed to the cravings, and you ate, and that's the weight issue that you want to work with. Yes. And now you're telling me the issue is you still have the cravings, but actually you're not succumbing to the cravings, you're not eating. So tell me, do you think you actually shifted your relationship to food or not? And she was like, I hadn't thought about it that way. But that's a really good example of how we can get her, in her mind, success was like cravings go away. But actually at that point in the process, she was at the point where she still had the cravings, but she wasn't succumbing to them. Now that is a massive, massive shift, but her mind was so fixated on my, how I can judge success as if the cravings are gone. Now over time, that change will have changed because you can see there's a progress, there's a shift of habit. But I just love, you can see I'm almost stuttering over my words because it's like it makes me want to laugh. But it's a true fact of our humanity, right? It's part of the humanity that we get fixated on a particular result, and then we can get all sorts of amazing things, but that one thing hasn't happened, that one marker. So that's why I said you don't be results focused, really have an open, non-agendered way of approaching this. And the point of this is, sometimes also it takes time and practice to shift a general pattern. Because at the time that she was on that call, the shift was still in progress. She was using MPA as a practice at that point, and was kind of missing and dismissing, the benchmarks along the way. But that's often how it works. Yes, and I've seen it so many times. MPA can shift something completely in one go. It can take you 20 seconds to do a process and have massive shifts. Or as, one lady said to me, 18 years of depression went away in 2 minutes. I do see these instantaneous shifts, but for the most part, a lot of things that we do, especially if that craving is based on a habit and the behavior is ingrained, then it does take that sort of time and that practice and that sort of just doing the thing several times. So these 5 steps that I've just given you, they're a great intervention. But if the cravings, are strongly habituated, then consider using it as a practice, and definitely consider adding MPA into the mix. Now, you're probably saying, how do I add the MPA process into the mix of this? Well, first step, of course, is to go and download the sheet, which you can get, again, go to today's notes, or in fact any of the notes, or anywhere on beabrillianthuman.com. But today's notes are www.beabrillianthuman.com/56. Also, I will lay out these 5 steps there as well, so you can grab those. And then I strongly recommend you get the training as well. If you've got this thing where you're just fighting the cravings, the MPA basic training will get you really into using the MPA process. It will also support you in actually using it and making it sustainable, and will again help you to be comfortable using that process alongside it. And the way I would use MPA alongside this process is you can MPA whatever the craving is. You can literally you need to find what I call the cookie cutter for it. That will tell you how to do that in the basic training and in the sheet. And then just each stage, each time anything comes up, you can use MPA to assist, because it assists in shifting that relationship. But I have seen, again, this process, this 5-step process is a great way to sort of separate and untangle yourself out from the personalized craving, give you more power, and MPA will be a great kind of accelerator for that whole process. All right, I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for being here and spending this time with me. If you have enjoyed this program, if you've got value from it, if you think it will help someone, go and tell them. Tell somebody today about the Be a Brilliant Human podcast, so they can come and find it and get whatever benefit you felt from this show. Make sure you remember to subscribe, and I will see you next week. Again, we're going to be on a similar topic next week, so I look forward to that. And I'm going to be answering or addressing the questions that I was asked in private message. If you'd like to message me, you can do. If you have a show topic you'd like me to cover, if you have feedback you'd like to offer, I'm always open to that. And of course, if you're on iTunes or anywhere else that has a review, if you feel like leaving me a wonderful 5-star review, I'd be super happy. Excellent. We're done. That's it. Go tell somebody, and I will see you next week. All that remains is to cue the moo.